I went away to the hills to pray about choosing disciples. When the conviction came to me that I would be guided as to whom to choose, I returned to Capernaum. I felt a strong inclination to go down to the waterfront, to speak to some men I had seen listening intently to my teachings. Whether they would leave their fishing nets to join me remained to be seen, but when I called them, Simon, Andrew, James, and John, they came immediately, happy to help in my work of healing and teaching. Others also joined me as I began my work amongst the people. I left my host Zedekiah's house with his warm assurances that I could return at any time. Thus it was that I commenced my mission as teacher and healer, wandering wherever needed through towns and villages. Before setting out, I gathered together the young men who had consented and were eager to help me. They would be listening to my teachings and would be mystified by much of what I wanted to say. It was vital I should first explain the background to all that had been revealed to me in the desert. I told them that despite my previously lazy way of life, I had always had a profound compassion for people. It was my compassion that made me turn from the God taught by the rabbis. When I spoke of my total rejection of a punishing Jehovah, I could see the doubt and shock in their faces. At considerable length I explained that I questioned how it was possible to speak of a good God when there was so much suffering endured by innocent children. As I spoke, I saw their faces gradually relax. I continued to voice my previous doubts and anger until I saw their expressions change into those of acceptance and then full agreement. I discovered I had put to them their own doubts and questions, which previously they had never had the courage to put into words. As we spoke together, I could sense their relief that they were no longer alone in their secret resistance to the rabbi's teachings. I told them there came a time when I began to realize ever more clearly that I was wasting my life. I wanted to change and felt very strongly I should go to John the Baptist as a starting point, as it were, to the commencement of a new way of living. I described what happened during the baptism and my 6 weeks in the desert. I explained that all my previous thoughts and beliefs, attitudes, arrogance, rebelliousness, were gradually cleansed from my consciousness while I was going through the deep revelations and visions showing me the reality that I now call the Father. I explained the nature of the Father and that this divine nature also constituted the divine will. I told them that it was man himself who, through wrong thinking and wrong behavior, shut himself off from the Father within him, and man alone, by first repenting and then by mental emotional cleansing, could find his own way back to full contact with the Father. When this was accomplished, the full nature of the Father would be released into the person's mind, heart, body, soul, and his life environment and experiences. As this happened, such a person would enter into the kingdom of heaven ruled by the Father, and also the kingdom of heaven would be established within the consciousness of the person. He would then have attained the purpose behind his existence. As I spoke to my disciples, I saw their reactions reflected in their faces. All doubt had gone. There was now a light of dawning comprehension and joy. These young men became enthusiastic believers and exclaimed, "This is indeed good news." However, after their first acceptance of all I said, there were times when they wondered whether all I said could be true. I understood this. To be prepared to rid themselves of the image of Jehovah so deeply imprinted in their minds took a great deal of courage. There were times when they spoke amongst themselves and questioned, who was this man claiming such marvels? Supposing they came along with me and it turned out that I was really a messenger from Satan, what then? They would be severely punished by Jehovah. They had much to lose, their standing in society as sober, hard-working young men, their reputation as tradesmen and artisans, their loss of income, and biggest obstacle of all, the probable anger and rejection by their families. What would they receive in return? I told them I could not promise them any earthly reward for their help in spreading the gospel of good news. I had no doubt at all that wherever we went we would be given food and shelter and would be well received by the people. I could only promise them the truth that the Father knew their needs and would fulfill them and keep them healthy. I could also promise them that as they turned to the Father and trusted the Father every step of the way, they would be happy in a way they had never been happy before. They would experience the kingdom of heaven themselves to the extent that they set aside the demands of self and served other people. They would witness the healings, and these would increase their faith and give them the courage to endure any discomforts of the journey. And this was how we came to start on our mission of spreading the good news of the gospel of the kingdom. I sent these young men ahead of me into the town we were to visit. As they entered it, they told the people to gather together to hear the good news of the kingdom of heaven. These people were astonished and wanted to know more, but the disciples urged them to fetch their friends and neighbors, and they would be told all about it when Jesus arrived. There would be healing of their sick people. Excitedly, many ran to help spread the good news, and soon they were gathered together in a huge crowd. I, who had so deeply and passionately rebelled against the long-faced religious homilies threatening violence, punishment, and damnation to sinners, now walked with joy to meet these crowds. I had my good news to share with them to brighten their day, and healing of ailments and afflictions to gladden their lives.